So we're talking today about the truth about aging. And when this subject was brought up, I didn't know if I knew any truth about aging. I didn't know exactly what to say, because it is a fact that we're all aging. And one of the problems that many of us in New Thought have had is that that's supposed to be not a good thing. If you're aging, if you experience death, experience disease, all of the things that attack the body, that seem to change the body in a negative way, are sort of the enemy. And so we're supposed to change our thinking to the point where we deny these things. We accept them. We do not accept them as part of our reality. And because we live in a culture where that is such a strong thing, we've bought into that. It's called race consciousness. We bought into that, and we have experienced the results, which are aging and disease and death and all of the things that are supposed to be the great enemies of humankind. So in my life, I bought into that. I was part of that thinking and taught it for many years. And I think I have had an awakening about the body over the last several years in a way that maybe it's a little hard to explain, but I'll try. I'll do my best, and I've been doing my best to do that. What I need to say, first of all, before I get into that, is pick up a little bit on last week when I talked about healing. And what I failed to mention is that the whole Unity movement came out of the healing of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. Myrtle Fillmore had tuberculosis early in her life. She went to every doctor, took every drug imaginable, and her kids said that she forced them upon them as well, some of the most foul medicines on the planet. And so she went through the traditional approach to healing and got no results. And she was not expected to live for very long. She was always a frail person. But she was at a talk in Kansas City given by a Dr. E.B. Weeks, who was a disciple of Emma Curtis Hopkins. And he made a statement that he could have made 1,000 times. She may have heard 1,000 times, but the moment she heard it this one time, it changed her life. And that was, you are a child of God and you cannot inherit illness. And she believed that her illness was due to inheritance, that she had no choice in the matter. And so she spent a number of years in meditation, sitting in a room by herself next to an empty chair. And that chair she envisioned as having Jesus sitting in it. And she would ask him questions and just commune with him. She went through a process of healing. And she got to the point, she lived, I think, to be 86 years old. And then when she did die, she went around announcing to all of the co-workers at Unity Village that she was going to leave and that she thought she could be of more service on the other side. But Charles watched all of this. He had had, as a youth, this ice skating accident, and he dislocated his hip, and one of his legs was shorter than the other. He wore a built-up shoe, I think all of his life. But that kept getting better. His leg actually, they say, was filling out over time. But he watched his wife go through this healing. He was a total skeptical about the whole notion of spiritual healing. He watched her go through this and was actually pretty amazed by it. Myrtle Fillmore really was the instigator of the whole Unity movement, in my opinion. Charles observed it, and he made notes, and he wrote books, and he wrote most of the literature that has guided the movement for all of these years, and that in a large degree is being abandoned now. But which is unfortunate. The unity that we see today is not the same unity that he started and that I joined up for. The whole movement has changed dramatically. And what's happened is it's gotten away from the awakening, spiritual awakening of the individual, and moved a lot to social issues and so forth, which happens when spiritual movements get bored. When they run out of ideas, they think they've seen it all. And the fact is, we haven't seen it all, and the movement needs to be regenerated, needs to start again. But anyway, Charles Fillmore experienced a healing of his own. And so I really failed to say that last week, that unity is here out of healing, out of the result of spiritual healing. But when you back it up even further, unity is here as the result of disease, as a result of illness. If the Fillmores had not been ill, there would be no unity. And so that's a very important idea to think about. It's an important idea to think about with yourself. When my body is giving me fits, I become closer to my spiritual nature probably than when everything's fine. And that's because I'm trying to heal. I'm trying to realign with my soul. And so I don't want to discount the idea of healing but what I was trying to say, and what I'm going to say this week, is that our bodies are mortal. Charles Fillmore believed that it was possible to reach a point in the body where the body could live forever, the body could be immortal. I would make this statement on my blog several times over the last number of years. And a lot of my colleagues would disagree with this, that Fillmore never really taught that, but he did. He taught it in the form of a teaching called regeneration. It's the idea of regenerating. He thought first the soul and the body would follow. That the soul was the problem, that we were spiritually immature and we were evolving. And if we were experiencing illness in the body, it was because the soul was sick. And that's been what I have rebelled against over the last several years, and why I wrote the book, The Complete Soul. Because the soul is not evolving, it is not ill. No matter what condition your body is in, your soul is whole, your soul is complete. You take someone like, who's the physicist, Stephen Hawking, who is practically a vegetable, but he's wired up to a computer in a way that he can speak to people through electronic voice. The case of a totally messed up body, but who he is still there. And the body, when you think about it in this sense, is an interface. And his body's messed up, but he still has an interface. He still has the ability to communicate. If I was in that condition without all the computer hookups and I was sitting up here, I could not communicate with you. My interface would be gone. My mind may still be there, and probably is still there. I would observe and look out and wish I could speak, wish I could communicate. But my interface is blocked. So what I'm saying is, let's not equate the condition of the soul with the condition of the body, because the body is mortal. And we can, perhaps we will extend life in the body to the point where it's, beyond anything we can imagine today. We're doing all kinds of limb replacements or joint replacements and heart replacements and all the liver replacements, going through a lot of replacements. So what if we replace the body to the point where it lives forever? Is that the point? Is that what we're after? Is that what would ease our soul? Is that what would bring peace to us? And I don't think it is. I think that the material plane will never behave like the spiritual plane. The spiritual plane is immortal. We are a dual being in a sense, and we're not really a dual being. We're one being, but we're expressing through a material body. And I said this a couple of weeks ago in meditation, on a Wednesday meditation, that just we're walking through life. You look down and we're on the earth. We're of two worlds. We're of the earth. And then you look up into the sky, and that's the universe. It's infinite. And we're always in these two worlds, and it depends on where we're looking. We are a soul and we are a body. We're two things. We're one thing expressing through another. So it feels like there's two things, but our attention is 99.9% looking down at the earth on this body. And so what I am suggesting is that you see your body aging, you go through some type of illness or whatever, it doesn't mean you're failing spiritually. What I believe is true is that if any one of us at any moment of our existence here stepped out of our bodies, had a near-death experience, that we would see that we are fully intact, fully alive. That which we identify as ourselves is complete. And we would look back at the body, as so many near-death experiences do, and not even care. Think, I don't want to go back into that. I heard one guy talking about it, and he said he found himself, after having this grand experience, he comes back and he's hovering over his body. And he said, how am I going to get this me, this huge me, into that? And he got sucked back into it. They always complain about the landing, the coming back. It's a jolt. And usually accompanied by a great deal of pain. One of the things that drove him out of the body in the first place. And most of the time, they resist that, don't want to come back, because they know there's so much more, and the body restricts our awareness. It restricts our faculties. I've compared it to, and I've never scuba dived, but I've compared it to putting on scuba gear and going into an underwater environment that you couldn't go into otherwise unless you had this kind of equipment. And you then are able to experience that. And scuba gear looks very awkward. You know, you wouldn't want to go shopping in scuba gear, I'm sure. The body's that way. It's our scuba gear for this planet. But it's not us. And we put a lot of emphasis on the condition of the body, the aging of the body and so forth. There's no doubt that it ages. But I don't feel guilty about it. I don't feel guilty when I catch a cold. When my body changes in some way. Maybe there's something I need to do different to stop that. And I want to be as healthy as I possibly can. I don't want my scuba gear having leaks in it. I want it to work perfectly as long as I'm here, but I know I'm not going to be here forever. That there is much more to me, and that this body actually restricts my faculties, restricts my consciousness. But I don't lament that any more than I would lament the fact that my physical abilities to move around in a scuba suit would be restricted while exploring a coral reef. Because you're exposed to something you would not be exposed to otherwise. And I think that's what this earth experience is. I can talk to you because I have a body. You can listen to me because you have ears. And you can process this. If you didn't have a body, you could probably still listen to me, but you probably wouldn't want to. You'd have better things to do. But the body is our interface, and we need to keep that in mind. We're not going to have this thing forever, but that's not a bad thing, because we will be around forever. That which we are. We're going to go back up and get into the boat and take off this scuba suit and get on with our lives. So we're fighting age. We're fighting this growing old, and I totally understand that. Somebody said they would A woman told me not long ago she'd love to have my hair. And I said, well, just follow me around for a couple of days and pick it up off the floor. It's have all you want. I don't like that kind of thing. I don't like getting older, watching my body change, thinking about when I was younger. But the weird thing is, when I was younger, I was always thinking about being older. Always looking forward to some other thing that was going to happen or some future day. Don't you remember being little, wondering what it would be like to be big? So we get big and we wish we were little again. Always wanting to be somewhere we're not. So what if we just accept the body where it is instead of fight it? It's estimated that by 2020, the global market for anti-aging products will be worth $331.3 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't even know how much that is. But the only thing that money has purchased thus far is a temporary gloss over of the aging process. Do you know anyone that's reversed their age as the result of cosmetics or vitamins or drugs or anything? I told you last week that all of the people I have known, all my colleagues, they're all dying off. And they've taught health, healing all their lives. I mean, all their professional, ministerial lives. But they keep getting older and keep dying. So that seems like a bit of a contradiction, maybe a little hypocrisy. I've seen people try to cover it up. And you can't cover it up. It catches up with you. So we need to stop running from it. Both the idea of healing as a failure and aging as a failure. It's just what it is. The body is a material expression. And if you look at everything in the material world, you'll see change, including the galaxy that we're in. They say the sun will burn out one of these days. That everything that we know as our reality will not be here anymore. And there's all kinds of evidence that there was a time when it wasn't here at all. It's a very interesting study, this whole thing of time and age and the physical side. You look at the book cliffs and you see these layers of sediment, of rock. That represents a long, long time. Many periods. It's just phenomenal. I get inspired looking at it. It's a fascinating thing to think, what would this place look like, say, at that layer or that layer? What was going on? What was walking past here? Who was looking at it? It wasn't me. I wasn't around. If I was, I don't remember it. Maybe I was. Coco Chanel. Nothing makes a woman or a man look so old as trying desperately hard to look young. I added or a man. I've never seen a man in a good toupee yet. I will never be caught in one of those things. You watch television for a little bit and all the models are attractive. All of the, and usually young, and if they're not young, if they're older, they look young. They're older people that look young. It's always youth. Youth is what we love. We love to see it. But when we're trying to cover up something that is not possible to cover up, then we're struggling. We're struggling against a natural process. It's understandable that we prefer youth to aging, especially when aging is accompanied by a deterioration of our physical and mental faculties. No doubt. I've known a number of people who, my father had a stroke, major stroke. And it interrupted his interface, his brain, his body. But it didn't interrupt who he thought he was or who he knew he was. He just couldn't communicate it in the same way. You probably all have known someone like that, in that state. That what comes out of your mouth may not be what you're trying to say, but you know what you're trying to say. So what is that person behind the body, the person back there, is still intact, still fine. That's you. That's your soul. It's the body that's messed up. It's what I was talking about last week with the television set. The signal is always there. The set may be damaged or broken, but the signal is still present. That's your soul. So we need to say, okay, that's the arrangement right now. Maybe my television set's not working so well. It's getting older. It's changing. And I'd like to be able to make it work as well as it used to. And maybe that's what reincarnation's all about. I don't know. It gives us another opportunity to go through that again. But I don't want to go through the teen years ever again. I don't want to do that. I want to be a walk-in. And I want to be a walk-in in a Hollywood star's body. So I'll have all the best looks and bypass all that adolescent crap. When we gaze, my sister sent me something. She usually watches these, so she'll think this is funny. And you probably have seen this. It's something that's been circulated on Facebook. Before you're old and wise, you must be young and stupid. Is that anybody see that? There's some truth to that, I think. When we gaze into the mirror, our soul is certain that it's not that aging person we see, that we're still at the peak and youth, the peak of youth and vitality. Do you have that experience? You see this changing video in front of you. It's called a mirror. Where did that person come from? And we're standing back there looking at it, and we're not feeling that. We're not feeling that way. So the soul is correct. It's our soul that is seeing that. We're seeing through this interface called the body. And we're looking at the body, and we're so used to being associating, that's me, looking back. But it's not. You're looking through the eyes of this body. You're using the faculties of this body to look into that mirror and see this reflection, this body that you inhabit at this time. But it's important to say that, I feel this way for a reason. I don't feel like I'm the age that I look, because I'm not. Bev brought this up a while ago about old and young souls. We've all heard that. And I bought into that for a long time. But there are no old and young souls. There's only a soul. It's just like the water illustration. You take a cup of water, or take a cup and dip it into the ocean. It's the same age. That water will always be the same age as the age of the ocean. Even if it's out of the ocean for 1,000 years. It's always the same age. What's old is when you took it out. You take the water out, its clock starts ticking. But the water doesn't age. It's just how long the water has been out of the ocean. So that's what we do. We step into this body. It's like a cup of water being dipped out of the ocean. And we say, I'm an old soul or a young soul. No. You are a soul expressing as a body, and you started at X date, and you'll end at X date. But that's not who you are. The soul doesn't age. There are no young and old souls. And this is something that's been taught in Unity. It's been taught just about every spiritual discipline I've ever encountered. That Jesus, for example, was an old soul. That can't be true. You dip water out of the ocean today and another cup out in 1,000 years, all those 2 cups of water and the ocean are all the same age. Water doesn't age. They say that the water that we are drinking now is the same water that was here in the very beginning. That's hard to conceive. How they can charge so much for it. But it's something to think about. Something of us is aging. What is it? It's our suit. It's our body. But the soul is ageless. We'll probably do this 1,000 more times. How many times have we stood looking in some mirror, or maybe some pool of water before mirrors were invented, looking at that aging body? It's probably happened a lot of times. And I don't like to dwell on the idea of reincarnation. What I do like to dwell on is the eternal nature of my soul. And the idea that if I'm here on this planet, I must be here because I chose to be here, because I wanted to take up this body, and I wanted to have this experience. And not all the experiences that I've had in this body have been good. And sometimes there's pain, sometimes there's aches, sometimes there's just problems with the body. But what have you done where there have not been problems involved? I think when we took on the body, we knew we were stepping from a very large experience into something that would be quite restrictive. Just like if you don the scuba diving equipment, you know that you're going to restrict your movement, but you're also going to be able to have an experience you couldn't have otherwise. And that's how we are to look at the body. We shouldn't mourn the aging of the body, and we shouldn't mourn the passing. We mourn what we miss. You know, we miss people. We miss when someone steps from this plane. But we're mourning our loss. We're not mourning them. What they are is beautiful and continues to experience life in ways we can scarcely comprehend. They're not going through a bad thing. We're going through a bad thing because we feel like we have lost an identifier, the ability to talk to somebody, to listen to somebody. And that's a difficult thing. But we're all going to cross that threshold. We're all going to cross that line at some point. And it should be thought of more as a celebration. This is one of the interesting things about ancient Egyptian, the pharaohs and so forth, who death was not a bad thing. They spent their whole life preparing for it. They saw it as a journey, and there were things about that I think are rather strange, their beliefs and so forth, but they didn't see it the same way we might, that they expected to experience immortality. And there were some tests they had to take and so forth, so on, but we have all that stuff too, you know, in our religion. We live in a culture that seems determined to lure us into a body-based identity. Science tells us that our body and brain are all that we are. That's a big, big thing. You are probably familiar with Eben Alexander, the neurosurgeon who had a near-death experience and says he was pretty much dead. But many of his colleagues in neuroscience, scientists, are trying to discredit him, his story, his experience, saying that could not possibly have happened because we are brain and body. And when your brain is dead, you cannot experience anything. You cannot have an experience. That's our standard model of science today. And it doesn't mean every scientist believes that, but that's the model, that the brain generates everything. That's why there's so much emphasis on evolution and evolution of the brain size. Size really does matter in that regard, because when science looks at, they're looking at the Neanderthal man, for example, and they're kind of rethinking this because they have decided that his brain was not as small as they thought. Is it brain capacity or is it television size? Is it how many channels will your television get? The soul will transmit through any body. It doesn't matter the brain size. There have been documented cases where people have been discovered to have almost zero brain tissue, and still were good in math and still were good in a lot of things. It's an incredible thing. That's in Pim van Lommel's book on the near-death experience. He reports that, and they show a picture of this brain that's almost non-existent of this man. but he's very intellectual, and didn't even know he didn't have what we would consider a full brain. So where does that come from? Whatever is left of the transmitter, whatever is there that needs to transmit, apparently was still transmitting. But where was the intelligence coming from that it was transmitting? That's the thing that we focus on. So science tells us that we're just a brain and body, and religion tells us that missteps while in this body can earn us an eternity in hell, with a great deal of emphasis placed on what you do in this body. And for eternity, you can burn because you made missteps. Society tells us that the comfort and preservation of this body takes precedence over every other consideration. And that's kind of the whole career thing. It's not necessarily do what you love to do what pays the most, because that'll take care of your body. Just so much of our thinking is centered on the body, and it's completely understandable. But that doesn't mean that we have to sink into that level as we identify and think of ourselves. We're much more than this body. To make peace with our aging body, we must first find the peace of our soul. And that is an incredibly simple thing to do. And we find it very difficult to do. But to just sit down and be still. I was sitting early this morning. I woke up at 4 o'clock, which was, I guess, 5 o'clock. My body said it was 5 o'clock. So I get up and I'm sitting in the quiet, and it's like you go into that place. It's like a fountain of energy that rises in us. It is ageless. It has nothing to do with whatever condition the body is in. The value of meditation is being able to forget the body, to let go of the body for a time. Say, I'm not this. I don't want to be distracted by this thing. I want to find out who I am, what's animating this body. And so we become receptive. That's our intuitive nature. We open up intuitively. We let the intellect rest. We turn within. We open ourselves to this fountain of eternal life, as Jesus called it, welling up into eternal life. And we realize we're much more than we have thought. We will all step from the confines of the body. That day will come. And I don't think it's worth spending a lot of time thinking about that. But to accept it, I'm here as a sojourner. I'm here momentarily. You think about your life right now. I was thinking about it when Diane mentioned trying to think of plays. Beth and I, many years ago, went to New York, and we went to New Jersey first. I did a 3-day seminar there at a convent that was rented by a Unity group, and they asked me to be the keynote speaker for 3 days. So we did that, and then we went to New York, and one of the highlights was to go to Cats, see Cats on Broadway, which was a just absolutely first-class experience. We went to Conan O'Brien's show. We were on that, and which was a second-class experience, and we had people show us all over the place. They were just really a phenomenal time. We were there before the Twin Towers went down. So there's this whole history that we have in life. And then I was thinking that I jumped from that to a wedding I did. I did a black and white wedding that was broadcast on the radio, and Tiny Tim was the best man and the soloist. Again, many years ago. There's just thousands of things that we have done that are associated with this body. But it's not us. We're passing through this. You look back on that, and it just seems like a flash. And when we step off this plane, it'll seem the same way. And we will have memories. We'll carry some memories probably with us. But they will not keep us locked into this. It's not like we would leave a place reluctantly and wish we could go back. We step from the confines of this body into the freedom of the soul, completely unhindered, and we will have no regrets. I totally believe this. That all the trying to be good that we're trying to be doesn't really work. You don't want to try to be good. You want to try to be yourself. That's the answer. That's what we're looking for, is be the soul that you are. That's how we make this body experience worth the while. We're not just here to stack up stuff and accumulate stuff. We're here, I think, because we want to be here. There was something that drew us here, that we wanted to have this experience. And maybe we remember what that is, maybe we don't. But it helps me to say, I'm not here because I'm an accident. Like Lulu and Hee Haw used to say, that 95% of all humans are caused by accident. I don't think so. I think we're here by choice. So it helps me to think from that perspective. I'm an eternal soul that chose to dip down into this undersea environment, this material environment, to see the beauty, to experience something that was attractive to me. And I could only do it with a body. So I own that. I now own my life. And that's a pretty big deal, because a lot of people don't own their life. They're victims. Victims of circumstance, victims of their body. And this helps us get over that. If we're a victim of age, I think it helps us get over that. Whatever reason I came for here, I'm about done. It's okay. I'll keep on going, keep on doing something. I think we'll all look back on this time and say to ourselves, if I only knew then what I can see clearly now, I would have lived a freer, happier life in my body. That's what happens to people who have the near-death experience. They get such a broad view of what this whole thing is, that they come back totally recharged with a new thought about how to experience this life. It's the things that seem so important to them are not important. They're all body-based ideas. It turns more to a soul-based experience. And that's not something you can learn. It's something that we go within ourselves, and we're taught by God. We're taught by this inner awakening. It changes our consciousness. It changes our understanding of who and what we are. So let's work toward knowing now what we will surely know then. If it was all over right now, if this was the last day of your life on this planet, have you ever been in a job that you didn't really like, and the last day it didn't seem so bad? I've had that happen. It's because you're looking at it from another place. And the interesting thing is that other place is always available. It's that point of view we have when we're not restricted by all of the stuff swirling around us. So, I don't know if that makes you feel any younger, but that's the truth about aging as I understand it. Thanks for coming out. We'll see you next week.